Nariman is associate professor at Yale University, so he is the author of the book that Payam just introduced. And I would have a pleasure to give him the opportunity to talk to you and present his thoughts and context.
Hi, Tama. Hello, everyone. I just have to sort of... so my name is Nari, and I sort of have to warn everyone that it's a bit of an improvisation, because it happened like a couple of days ago. I went to Vienna for the premiere of Triptych, Il Trittico. They staged an opera by Giacomo Puccini in one day, and I was very curious about it. So I was sitting in Vienna, preparing myself, dressing properly to go to the opera, and then I received Jama's message saying, "Nari, we're actually in Paris. Would you like to come and join this beautiful event?" And I said yes, because it's always a great opportunity to meet new people and to talk about contemporary art and decoloniality and all these things. However, my perspective is very cautious. It's very limited, I would say, because I don't have a freedom to talk freely. As an academic, there are limitations about what I can say, about the messages for which I'm responsible or for which I can take responsibility. So please don't expect me to kind of reveal or discover some kind of fundamental truth, or I'd say food for thought rather than anything conclusive. So this talk is entitled Revenons à nos moutons. Revenons à nos moutons is let's go back to our ship. And I think this is a perfect metaphor for decoloniality. So the story it's actually a pre-imperial, kind of France Grandeur story. It's 15th century, so there is nothing like. So I hope I'm not trying to kind of epistemologically colonize anyone in this room. So it's a story about a berger who was accused to steal ship from a drapier, and then the lawyer who was supposed to protect this berger, he also kind of defrauded this drapier. And then when they go to the court, then the judge at a certain point says, "Revenons à nos moutons." Yeah, so let's make this story clear. Yeah, let's not make it kind of fuzzy, or let's not add additional mud to the story, which is already complicated. So I think it is very useful. It is a very nice metaphor for decolonization. Yeah, because decolonization has become a sort of passepartout, a term which kind of collected, sort of absorbed so many meanings, which became intellectually probing and problematic. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. So this is not about real mouton. Yeah, so decoloniality, decolonization, decolonial overall in 2023 became sort of compromised notion, and so I invite you to sort of not to accept it as a fait accompli. Yeah? I invite you to reflect and probably follow me in the reflection about this term. Yeah, so it's not a situation in which a term is completely devoid of sense. So there is certain sense, yeah, and there is certain sense of purpose when you talk about decolonization. Yeah, so we shouldn't neglect this term, yeah, abandon it, but we should be very, very careful and cautious about it. So mainly because decolonization means different things for different audiences, for different people. So and to this we have to add conceptual fashion, yeah, because fashion, and it is the seat, it is the very place where we can state sort of safely that fashion is what comes out of fashion, right? So we feel that it is fashion when it was fashion, when it is not fashion anymore. And the same thing, believe me, goes for intellectual fashion, yeah. And obviously politics and effect. And there is a trajectory of thought that employs decolonization for exploring trauma and healing and emotions, and this is absolutely relevant and pertinent. And then we have resilience and sort of healing of colonial trauma and therapy and like imperial gaslighting, what I call imperial gaslighting, yeah, because sometimes we gather in Central Asia, in Almaty or in different places, and then it really depends on the people in the audience, because like older generations, they just don't believe they don't feel it. Yeah, you don't have the same vibe. Well, and younger generations have a different kind of approach and perception. And then when we start to talk to each other, we don't necessarily have the common language to discuss this, right? So this is about the kind of finding the common ground for discussion. So and at the end, it all becomes so fundamentally vague. Yeah, we feel something, but we don't really know what the other person feels. Hence, a distinction between discourses and practices, in my view, becomes kind of necessary, or if not necessary, important, if not important, useful at least, right? Let's begin with discourses. So, a decolonial discourse, mainly it is a critique of the past. In the case of Kazakhstan, it is a critique of the Soviet past, yeah? Now, this already became a consensus that the Soviet past was a colonial past. We can discuss the degrees, we can discuss the shades of gray, yeah, but this was what it was. But it also implies the rupture with the past, right? Because when we add when we add post, when we add anything which precedes the colonial, we want to signify the rupture, right? So, and then obviously there is this fact of when you start to kind of when you part with this sort of critique, you start to question your own knowledge about yourself, your knowledge about others, your knowledge about the things that are happening, and then and this at times this becomes kind of sort of soul searching, but this soul searching is useful, especially when we go to the exploration of subjectivities. So. And discourse is, obviously, it is a, when we talk about the discourse internally, it is always a sum of statements on a given topic, on a given theme. But, so if we want to understand how it is made, we have to follow kind of the rules with which this discourse is made, yeah? And once we follow the rules, we study them, we study power dynamics, and we study the structures and the patterns involved in the creation of those rules. But a bigger issue emerges when we begin to explore the sense of direction or the sense of purpose of this discourse, right? Because one thing is to explore how the discourse is made, so it can be an intellectual exercise, right, which is kind of detached from interactions or from even, let's say, put it simply, real life, right? But when we go into perceptions, or impact, it becomes a different thing. And then, at this stage, performative aspect, like anything performative, yeah, performative practices, performance becomes kind of important, because discourse can be performative. I don't know if we chant it. But sort of it may incite or inspire performance. But practices are always performative. Yeah, they are not necessarily related, yeah, to the realm of art. But for the purpose for which we are here today, I think it's safe to claim that they are intertwined. Yeah. I will provide one example. I think it's time for example, because someone is starting to fall asleep in this room. So it is something which happened to me this summer in Almaty. I was in a place. It is a very interesting place that was opened, I don't know, probably 5 years ago. Yeah, something like this. And I witnessed a very interesting conversation. I did not interfere into that conversation. It was just, I was an observer. And then it was a conversation between a recent expert from St. Petersburg, and so this person obviously relocated after the war erupted in February 22, and a Kazakh artist, scholar, activist, and then so the expert was trying to perform consideration and respect to local Kazakh culture. And this expert was wearing Tubiteka. You know, I think I have the slide for Tubiteka in the PowerPoint. I may, yes, this one. So obviously, this person didn't have any sort of notion or any clue about the local culture. Yeah, so didn't have any deep knowledge about it. But this person sort of was trying superficially to show some sort of consideration. And then there was this local, very esteemed person who accused the, let's say, protagonist one for the cultural appropriation. Yes, which makes sense, right? Because this was exactly the act of cultural appropriation. However, now the analysis becomes, right, because we don't have to approach this situation normatively. Yeah, we don't have to be normative about this. We can just analyze the situation. So, and we can claim that the person A is a would not, person protagonist 2 is, I don't know, anything else, but the kind of the morale of this sort of story is, and they had a dialogue, which which happened. So it was also interesting to follow. But I mean, claiming or using any cliche to describe any of them would be analytically useless, right? And because there is always a risk to throw the baby with the water. And at the end, we can keep the baby. We can also keep the water. Water can be useful. We can water plants, something like this. So, you know, if we approach this kind of decoloniality from the point of view of practices, of what people mean, of what people imply about cultural appropriation, what people imply about the respect of local cultures, or any sort of cultures, yeah, we face this kind of very difficult dilemmas, because this becomes eventually about practices, yeah, not about discourses, right? And and then we are able to notice what's going on currently, and this is about gatekeeping to some extent, yeah, and territoriality. So decolonization, in many instances, in many cases, means sort of gatekeeping, yeah. So this culture is such and such, yeah, and someone claims to represent this culture. But the question is, yeah, who is really to be a gatekeeper? Who is really to represent such and such culture? Yeah, I don't know, if I think about myself, I've been formed culturally in Central Asia and Kazakhstan, but also outside Kazakhstan. Can I represent any of the cultures which sort of help me to form myself? Maybe not, maybe yes, I don't know. This is an open question, yeah? So this is not anything that I kind of try to impose on you. This is a reflection on what's going on. So, and again, we don't have to approach this or analyze it normatively, yeah? There is no norm in this situation. This is a new situation, yeah? And there is potential for analysis. Now, let me make the next step forward, yeah, and say a few words about the academic part of this equation, because this is something which I know, like in my personal experience in this. Here, I think the kind of temporal dynamics is very important. So, in particular, I know the experience which Central Asian academics had, let's say 20, 15, 10 years ago, right? Because the mainstream topics for the exploration of Central Asia, like 20, 15 years ago, was Islam, terrorism, and some topics that were kind of interesting, probably more interesting for the outside audience. But inside the region, this was probably important, but this was not the most important issues. So, and the other part of the story was that we actually we didn't have voice because we were not represented in any journal boards. We didn't have any Central Asian person in any publishing house. Grant distribution was also made by someone else. So basically the external knowledge was imposed on the region, And in order to publish, in order to get inside, you had to conform to external rules. So that was an issue. So step by step, I remember like 10 years ago, I started to publish my papers, and sometimes I had to choose less prestigious publishers because I couldn't get in, right? Because you have to be part of the system to be the system, right? So, and then things started to change. Now the picture is completely different, yeah, because there are people from the region who understand the region, who are able to speak about the region professionally, and I review a lot of papers and articles and book proposals and books sometimes. So, and this, like the presence of one single person or two single people, I don't know, 2 people, 3 people in the area, from the area, in professional expertise changes the picture dramatically. So this is part of decolonization, the decolonization of knowledge and the discourse production. This is very important, and well, I have colleagues who sort of sacrifice a lot of time and energy into that. Botakos Hasanbekova, for example, Diana Kudaibergenova, and a few other people. So, you know, this is kind of part of the picture if we talk about the how the academic discourse works. But again, academic discourse here is very much intertwined with academic practices. Yeah, because writing is practice, publishing is practice, talking to editors is practice, selling your ideas is also a practice. Yeah, it is not only discourse. Yeah, so decolonial discourse is fundamentally a part of decolonial practice. Well, then 2 issues kind of remain that I would like to mention and which are important for the audience here. One is what the contemporary artists have to do with this. And the question, the answer, I still have time, right? How much time do I have? Yeah. Okay. So one thing is really about the role of contemporary art in the production kind of I wouldn't say maintenance, because maintenance is such a problematic word. In the kind of say reproduction, yeah, kind of making it alive, making it thrive. The issue with with contemporary art is very particular in Kazakhstan. It's very different from I mean, now it's very different from what was happening, say, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It was very different from what was going on in the 1980s. It's very different from, let's say, what's going on in the architecture. The issue is that, sort of, in my view, and this view is very limited. I'm not like Jama or Alima, so I'm not a professional person who works with the artists, but I know many artists, and I've published a couple of papers that focus on the artists. Well, first of all, they are at the front kind of line of the discussion because they read, they educate themselves, and they travel. Academics from Central Asia who live in the region, they travel less, and they're less open-minded. So artists are way more open-minded, way more connected, and they know theory much better. And the question is how they use theory, right? Because there are ways to use theory, and ways not to use theory, and ways to sort of to problematize and whatnot. The second thing is the political repression, and it's just this fundamental issue of political freedoms and the lack thereof. Yeah, because Kazakhstan in particular is a place where you cannot speak freely, where you are afraid of speak freely, where the state does not. Sometimes the state does not repress you for saying anything, for writing anything, but the state atomizes people. The state makes them less willing to engage in community and groups. So contemporary art is a place which creates community, which creates a milieu. And creating the milieu is the best and the most perfect antidote for kind of thinking about the state, thinking about democracy, thinking about how the things should work instead of how they do work badly. And in this sense, so contemporary art is a kind of is some fresh air, yeah, for people who but then again we have the question of like who is involved in who has access to that fresh air, but we cannot solve this issue. I hope you realize this. And finally, there is the and I know this will sound banal, and when I was thinking about what I would say today, I realized, like, saying to myself that this is kind of banal, but this is still true. Yeah, because art is a universal language. Yeah, it is a universal language. You don't need. It doesn't need to be. You don't need to know a language, a particular language, to understand or to be sensitive to some form of art, right? Because Kazakhstan is a country which is divided, which is really, really divided, and not only geographically. It is divided economically. There is a major issue with the urban versus rural kind of dynamics, because there's the huge urbanization at this moment, and then urbanization, as you know from history, creates tensions. Yeah, the social upheaval sometimes, and then there were very tragic and unpleasant things that happened last year in January in Almaty, in other cities, which is called Kantar. Probably someone would mention this. Dilda, who is present here, has done a lot to make sort of to. I'm afraid of saying something wrong, but and I don't want to use the word publicize, but to kind of to make this story known and sensitive for the audiences in Kazakhstan and abroad. So there are a lot of divides, and there is a linguistic divide, which is very important. Yeah, because the Russophone Kazakhs and Kazachophone Kazakhstan, actually, the national, like the state language is a Kazakh language, but there are some people who do not speak it or do not speak it well. So there is a sort of a certain tension because of that. So art has this potential, or has this unifying function. Yeah, so it can be it can be healing in a way. Yeah, and then you don't need to like to be particularly you don't need to have this common kind of perception of art. Yeah, you can see something for you, right? And we have artists like Saulia Suleimanova, who's really who uses very kind of sophisticated and kind of postmodern or whatever material, who's really like advanced in the terms of like materiality, but who's very clear, straightforward in her messages. Yeah. So, and this kind of technical freedom and mastering of the material, and at the same time like very direct messages which she projects in her works, are a brilliant illustration of that. So, and the final kind of part of this talk is where we go, or where it goes, right? And I do not have a response or to this question. I can offer some sense of purpose or sense of trajectory where it could go. Potentially, Jama mentioned a few things which are kind of important. Strategically, I could add a few kind of things from an academic perspective. First of all, there are a few kind of centripetal movements which are currently going on, and the state imposes us or promotes a certain vision of development, yeah, which is called development in the state language, and it is not what, I try to be cautious here, it's not what the society, or probably not what actually people necessarily accept, and this is potentially a source of tension. It is actually a source of tension now, and we also have social tensions that can which are primarily of economic nature, which sort of make some efforts irrelevant in the sense that, the state may promote or may not promote any sort of kind of ideal scenario, but the situation on the ground remains, when the situation on the ground remains problematic, you have to distribute resources in a way that would prevent like some just real issues happening. And then there are interesting intellectual trends, such as recent interest to memory, places of memory. There are debates, always debates about decolonization and post-colonization, post-coloniality, right? Post-colonial approaches were popular in the West 40, 50 years ago. They have not been really appropriated in Kazakhstan, so we didn't really have a major post-colonial scholarship that crystallized and that thrived. And this is a pity, and I'm part of the problem actually, because it has been years that I'm trying to publish my post-colonial book. It's still at the publisher for various reasons. So, and then there are market reasons here. If we talk about contemporary art, artists are dependent on what's going on the market. They have to conform to certain rules. They have to collaborate with institutions. And institutions have their own sort of agendas. And I'm talking now primarily about international institutions, but local institutions as well. And we have very few. This is my kind of my last statement and the message which I'm trying to promote, which I'm trying to kind of to state. We have very few institutions, independent institutions, that work on the creation of spaces or milieu of dialogue, exchange, and kind of co-production of knowledge, respectful and sort of productive production. Sorry. Of knowledge, and Tselinny is one such institution. There must be more. Hopefully there will be more in the future. But I mean, we're here because of Tselinny. So thank you so much, and thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't disappoint you.